Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dick Moody, the president of the Danvers Veterans Council, and I'll be your master of ceremonies today. Now, each year on Veterans Day, the town of Danvers commemorates the current and the past veterans of the people who have served their country, and we have a very good history in our town as far as the people that have served from Danvers. There have been general officers, there have been a Medal of Honor winner, there have been everyday soldiers that have done great things and been heroes, and they've all come forward and their families have sacrificed in ways that we can never imagine. Today it's our intention to honor the Danvers veterans who have sacrificed their time and effort, and in some cases their lives, to preserve peace and liberty in our country. Now we'll walk through the cemeteries in town. We'll show how many Danvers families have suffered through the death of a loved one. Down at Walnut Grove, we have one Medal of Honor recipient that is residing there, Dan Stevens. He is a Civil War veteran, and unfortunately, his gravestone was missing, and there was just a very small marker to show where he was buried. Now, through a Danvers resident, Mr. Ken Reardon, many of you know him, he has taken it upon himself to refurbish the grave of Daniel Stevens. Today, as you drive through Walnut Grove, it looks absolutely beautiful, and people can see it as soon as they go in. In addition to that, Ken has put together a beautiful plaque commemorating all of the citizens of Danvers, all the way back to the start of the country, who have served in uniform. It's quite a tribute, and Ken has done a wonderful job. It's our hope today that everybody will finish up our presentation with a renewed appreciation of the veterans in town that have served throughout history and today. It's hard to imagine a patriotic ceremony without an expression of thanks or belief in God. And we are indeed fortunate this morning to have with us Reverend Pamela Cochran of the Maple Street Congregational Church, who will give us the invocation. Reverend Cochran.
I'm Reverend Pam Cochran from Maple Street Congregational Church here in the Memory Garden right off of Maple Street here in Danvers. I'm honored to participate in our observances this Veterans Day, November 11th, 2020, offering the invocation as we call ourselves together. Gracious, ever-present God of many names and of none, we give thanks for this day and for this time of gathering. We join both physically and virtually from places throughout our community in honor and praise of our veterans, remembering those who lost their lives serving our country, those who served in past conflicts, those retired, and those in active duty, those who have served in peacetime, and those who have served in war times, those in harm's way, and those still tending to their wounded bodies and souls. Thank you for the men and women whom you formed, brave of heart and strong in conviction, steadfast in their call and duty to serve. May your presence of peace be with us. Guide us as we commemorate all those who dedicate themselves to protect and defend our nation. And God of peace, we ask for strength and courage for the day. Keep us safe and fearless amidst the tides that may divide us, for we are one in spirit. Amen.
At this time, our ceremony has a special note. One of the best female country artists of our time lives right here in the town of Danvers. Her name is Annie Brobst, and she is part of our tribute today. Annie, who has her own country band and performs throughout the Northeast, has been a 4-time recipient of the New England Female Artist of the Year Award and a 4-time winner of the Live Country Act Award. She has been selected as Country Artist of the Year, and one of the songs she wrote was entitled Song of the Year. In addition, she is open for country stars such as Joe Nichols, Montgomery Gentry, David Lee Murphy, and performed with Miranda Lambert and Dierks Bentley. Today, she will add her beautiful voice to our patriotic event. May I present Miss Annie Brobst.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, we're so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Steve Bartha, and I'm the Danvers Town Manager. It's my honor and privilege to join you. Today we find ourselves celebrating another virtual holiday in this most unusual of years. I'd like to start by thanking Veteran Service Officer Kelly Reyes Teixeira, Sergeant Steve Baldessari from Danvers PD, and the entire DCAT team for coordinating the logistics of this virtual celebration. I'd also like to thank everybody watching, as well as those who aren't watching, because this hasn't just been an unusual year. It's been a year that's challenged us in ways we never imagined, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Those of us who have never donned a military uniform might be getting a small sense during this pandemic of the relentless and enormous pressures that active military and veterans signed up for. But also hopefully a small taste of the joy that comes from being part of something bigger than ourselves through selfless acts of service to others, like wearing a mask, supporting a friend, and checking in on neighbors and loved ones to make sure that they're doing okay. I know this analogy pales in comparison, but for me at least, this framework has strengthened my already deep sense of gratitude toward the veterans in my life, grandparents, uncles, and childhood friends. I hope it's provided you the space to reflect as well. On behalf of the Danvers community, please enjoy the celebration, and I'd like to introduce the chairman of our select board, Dan Bennett. Thank you.
Hello, Danvers. I'm Dan Bennett, chairman of the Select Board Association, and on behalf of my fellow board members, Maureen Bernard, Bill Clark, David Mills, Gardner Trask, we extend our grateful thanks to all our veterans in the community.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. And God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
In honor of our veterans who have served the United States, on behalf of the Girl Scouts, I'd like to thank the veterans who have served to protect our community.
Hello, I'm State Senator Joan Lovely, and I am honored to bring you Veterans Day remarks this year. Veterans Day, originally known as Armistice Day, was first celebrated in 1919 to commemorate the one-year anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. Congress formally passed legislation in 1938 designating Armistice Day as a federal holiday. In 1954, following World War II and the Korean War, Congress changed the day's title from Armistice Day to Veterans Day in order to honor all American veterans of war. In 1975, President Gerald Ford signed into law November 11th as our official Veterans Day. On Veterans Day each year, our communities honor and celebrate the bravery of all veterans who have served in the United States Armed Forces, whether living or deceased. According to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Massachusetts is home to 323,253 veterans, with over half being 65 years old or older. The Commonwealth has long been a leader in supporting and honoring our veterans through comprehensive policy, and we remain committed to continuing that legacy. Thank you, Danvers, for your commitment to all Danvers veterans and for putting together this wonderful tribute. And thank you to all those who have been a part of the great brotherhood and sisterhood we call the United States military. To our veterans, active duty service members, guardsmen, and reservists, it is your service and sacrifice that has kept our country safe and free. And for that service and sacrifice, we are eternally grateful. Thank you, and happy Veterans Day.
Our guest speaker today is well known in our town. Peter Morandi has served the town as a health and safety officer as well as a veteran service officer for years leading up to his retirement last year. Peter has served the veterans in this town in a noteworthy manner. He is earmarked and known by his quick responsiveness, timely follow-up, and perhaps most importantly, his concern for for the veterans that he was helping. Today we have asked Peter to return to the stage and tell us a little bit about his reflections on Veterans Day and the veterans of the town. Peter Morandi.
Good morning. My name is Peter Morandi, and I'd like to welcome you to the Village Training Field up here on Center Street. At the corner of Center and Ingersoll Streets is a large granite marker that declares this site a training field forever. For many years, a well-formed militia used this site to drill as a military unit for the purpose of protecting their families, friends, and neighbors. I encourage all to come and pay your respects to some of America's earliest veterans at this awesome landmark and hallowed grounds. You can read more about the history of the Village Training Field on the town website or right on the markers around this field. I'm here today to tape a message that will be aired by Danvers Community Access Television on Veterans Day. This is an honor that I would never have imagined when I moved to Danvers about 38 years ago to raise my family. I was also most fortunate to have served the fine residents of Danvers as your Public Health Director and Director of Veterans Affairs, a career that began in 1990 and ended about 9 months ago. People who know me would quickly agree that I communicate best when I shoot directly from the hip. But I decided that efficient use of my time is best for this event, so I'm going to remain formal. And with that brief introduction in place, I will humbly begin by stating that veterans all share at least one thing in common. Whether you served in General George Washington's Continental Army and began your training right here in the years leading up to the American Revolution, or whether you volunteered to serve in the U.S. Coast Guard and took your basic training in Cape May, New Jersey, as I did 50 years ago this month. From the very first day of our military service, we were ordered to work, eat, sleep, and live with other military personnel of our kind, as a single unit and disregarding all else. Every soldier, sailor, airman, and that includes all women in the Air Force and our newly formed Space Force, Marine, and yes, especially us Coasties, as we are called, quickly learned to function as a military unit. And it became a fact. Our best chances of success was when we had each other's backs, night and day. Upon discharge, military personnel readjusted to civilian life. Naturally, the lessons we learned from our experiences in the military stuck with us, and in many ways influenced our lives going forward. There is much truth to the adage, once a Marine, always a Marine. The structure of military life matured me in a good way. Of that I am certain and forever grateful. As life unfolded for me, I never forgot that I was a veteran first, but I also became a public health guy, as you already know. So it would be remiss of me to overlook the many veterans who struggled with readjusting to civilian life, and the many who continue to suffer from the invisible wounds that manifest when nobody has your backs anymore. There are no accurate statistics on how many of our veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress, self-isolation, and depression. But we all know you exist across America and in almost every community. Some may even be our neighbors. And I must get even darker for just a moment here to address a statistic that is accurate to track. I'm talking about veteran suicide rates. But this Veterans Day, of which I am so honored to deliver, is much broader than health statistics. My message to the town this Veterans Day is about recognizing the importance of unity across America, especially across Danvers, especially now. I'd like to build on this message with a brief story of one of Danvers' finest, who lived not very far from here about 100 years ago. Ludwig Carmichael enlisted right after graduating from Holton High School, and he survived a combat assignment nearing the end of World War I. He was shipped stateside when the war ended, and as he was preparing to be honorably discharged, he, like many other young soldiers that year, fell victim to the virus responsible for the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. I am told by reliable sources that at the time of his death, his future bride, a Danvers lady, was busy making wedding plans to be implemented immediately upon his return home. Now, how sad is that part of the story? There would be no readjusting to civilian life for Private Carmichael. Instead, a memorial to this veteran was placed at the corner of Forest and Maple Streets, less than 1 mile from here, on the left side of Route 62 as you head out of town towards Hathorn. A few years ago, the Danvers Veterans Council, using donations from private sources, upgraded his memorial with a new plaque describing his military service and sacrifice. For some reason, we chose this memorial to upgrade, but we had no idea that a modern-day pandemic was about to affect our lives. Next. I think this story is worth sharing, and I will continue to build my message of unity upon it. We have learned much from the 1918 pandemic. It's obvious by today's standards that soldiers who are ordered to work, eat, sleep, and live together would be at high risk to acquire the virus. Social distancing to prevent the disease only became routine when science advanced and government was forced to take measures to protect the public in today's pandemic. But with today's social distancing comes isolation, and that can become deeply troubling. More is known about controlling the COVID-19 virus, also dubbed the invisible enemy, than behavioral health disorders like depression and self-isolation. These behavioral health disorders are a real threat to public health, and perhaps they are an invisible enemy too. And here is where I'll return to my message about the importance of covering each other's backs the way veterans did when we were in the military in order to function as a unit. But also, throughout our history, especially during times of peril, Americans voluntarily worked together toward a common cause. Working with one another for the well-being of our community is the American way. It should always be the Danvers way too. We can help unify our community by conducting frequent wellness checks with neighbors, friends, and family. That's how we cover each other's backs during the pandemic. And this message can apply to younger members of our community as well. I was inspired to target Danvers students from my third grade grandson, Alexander. In a recent conversation I had with him about my role over this Veterans Day, he asked me not to forget about the patriotic greeting cards his entire class made last year in honor of Veterans Day. He sent his handmade message thanking me for my service in the Coast Guard directly to my office. I was so proud when I unexpectedly received it that I displayed that card publicly until the day I left Town Hall. So this message to our school-age kids, some of whom are Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, is simple. Actively connect with veterans as your teachers see fit whenever you can. Or do it on your own, with your parents' permission, of course. You younger citizens have the power to inspire and to cheer up lonely people, because everyone really appreciates kind deeds, especially when they come from our youth. Hey, you might even know some lonely kids out there too. Maybe they need a friend to cover their back. So in summation, an act of kindness means a lot to someone suffering from loneliness, a possible side effect of social distancing. We are all isolating to some extent during this pandemic. As veterans, we learned that the key to the success of a military unit was to always watch each other's back. This experience is valuable in our civilian life too. Plus, we can set an example for all. And while the tributes unfurled to honor Private Carmichael during the last pandemic, I wonder how the future Mrs. Carmichael coped with her personal loss. Did anyone have her back? Was she consoled by family, friends, and neighbors? I also wonder if Private Carmichael's memorial at the corner of Forest and Maple Streets could serve us all well as a reminder to unite as a community and support each other, especially during this time of peril. And let's always remember to welcome our veterans back home and never forget to thank all veterans. Please stay safe and take care of one another. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight
o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air,
gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelly Reyes Teixeira, and I am the Veteran Service Officer here in Danvers. To all our veterans here today, I sincerely say thank you for your service. As a United States Marine veteran in your VSO, I share the pride and privilege with you in being able to say that we have served in the greatest military in the world. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the history of Veterans Day, but for those who are not, I'll quickly touch on the origins. World War I, now known as the Great War, officially ended in 1919. However, fighting had ceased 7 months earlier in 1918, when at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the warring country signed a ceasefire, which brought an end to the conflict. In November of 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11th Armistice Day to honor all the heroes that died in World War I. Over time, the name was changed to Veterans Day, and the purpose of this day was changed to honor all American veterans of all wars. Danvers takes great pride in honoring our veterans, and it is our pleasure to share these photos with you. So for the next few minutes, please join me in paying tributes to the men and women who proudly serve their country. In closing, I would like to thank everyone who helped make this virtual ceremony possible with all your hard work, collaboration, and support. May God bless the veterans, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and happy Veterans Day.
You know, at the outset of this ceremony, I mentioned that Danvers had produced some of the bravest soldiers in the country. But we would be remiss if we did not stop to honor one particular family. That family were the Soucy brothers. Many of us grew up as their friends, but only a few knew that six Soucy brothers, all joined the United States Army or Marine Corps and served their country, ranging from World War II to Korea and beyond. The Danvers Veterans Council believes that this family deserves very special recognition and will be focusing its attention on bringing commemorative recognition to the family in the upcoming months. Here to tell you a little bit more about the Soucy family is the daughter of one of the brothers, Mrs. Janine Nash.
Good morning. My name is Janine Nash, and I am the proud daughter and niece of several Danvers World War II and Korean War veterans. I have been asked to share their story with you, but first I would like to thank Dick Moody and the Veterans Council for inviting me to speak about my father and my uncles today. It is truly an honor. My father, Roland Soucy, and all of his siblings were born and raised in Danvers. 6 boys and 2 girls born to French-Canadian immigrants. They grew up during the Great Depression. Always proud of their hardy upbringing, the 6 Soucy boys were self-proclaimed Danversport rats. Throughout their childhood, their father struggled to find work, and without a steady income, the family was dependent on the boys to help them stay afloat. Though they didn't have much, over time they developed a great work ethic and a sense of service to their family, their community, and to their country. When America was thrust into World War II, my father had just graduated from Holton High School and had taken a job at Sylvania with 3 of his brothers. In the span of less than a year, 5 of the 6 brothers would join the flood of patriotic young men entering the service to defend our freedom. All of the Soucy boys were 20 years old or younger when they went off to war. First to join the fight was my Uncle Armand, who joined the Marines on June 19, 1942. He was trained as a marksman at Parris Island and completed quartermaster school at New River. A part of the 3rd Marine Division, Armin crossed the equator bound for New Zealand on March of 1943 and later participated in action against the enemy at Bougainville in the Solomon Islands, Guam, and possibly at Iwo Jima. He was on active duty throughout his enlistment, survived malaria, and was honorably discharged with the rank of corporal on October 31st, 1945. His twin brother, Roger, enlisted in the Army a month later on August 20th, 1942, and left for Fort Devens to serve in the Medical Corps. According to his wife, Roger was then sent overseas to China, Burma, and India, often referred to as the Forgotten Theater of World War II. Unfortunately, we do not have many details on his service during that time, but we do know that he proudly served on the honor guard for a presidential funeral and was honorably discharged from the Army on March 13, 1946. 4 months later, my father, Roland, joined the Marines on December 4, 1942. He was trained as a quartermaster and was stationed at Quantico, Virginia, where he worked at length for Headquarters Company. In 1945, he was called to join the newly formed 6th Marine Division and headed for the South Pacific. The 6th was sent to Okinawa, Japan, where they bravely fought battles at Sugarloaf Hill and Naha. When the Japanese surrendered, his unit was sent to Tingsao, China, to accept the surrender of Japanese forces and oversee their repatriation to Japan. Dad was honorably discharged as a sergeant in April of 1946, but was called back during the Korean War, where he served stateside at Camp Lejeune. He rose to the rank of staff sergeant and was discharged in 1952 to rejoin his growing family in Danvers. My Uncle Ray joined the Marines 3 months later on March 5, 1943. In July of that year, he sailed from San Diego to American Samoa and became an amphibious truck crewman in the Pacific Theater. He was attached to the 5th Defense Battalion and served during enemy bombing raids on the Ellis Islands and later participated in the legendary battle at Iwo Jima. Ray remained serving on active duty until November of 1945, when he was honorably discharged as a private first class. Like my father, he would rejoin the Marines during the Korean War and serve through 1952, when he was honorably discharged with the rank of staff sergeant. A month later, my Uncle Joe enlisted in the Marines on his 18th birthday, April 9, 1944. He was trained with the infantry at Camp Lejeune and then sent to sea school in San Diego in February of 1945. Though I was unable to find all the places he was sent, I do know he was a field music first class and that he was on active duty through December of 1945, when he was honorably discharged with the rank of corporal. Uncle Joe gave his word to the Marines that he would rejoin and did so shortly after. He remained in their service through the Korean War, where he earned the rank of staff sergeant, and 3 of his children were born at Camp Lejeune. The longest serving Susi brother, local listings note his involvement with the Marine Corps until at least 1962. The youngest, Philip, was the last to join the service. While he was underage when his brothers joined, he soon followed the path of his brother Roger and enlisted with the Army on April 12, 1946. Though the war was technically over, there was still much work to be done, and records show he was sent to the Panama Canal for at least part of his enlistment. Family narrative was that Philip had some medical issues that shortened his service. This seems to be true, as he was honorably discharged on October 13, 1947. Despite his shortened term, I know his commitment to service was still as strong as his brothers before him, and he was proud to be the 6th Susi brother to serve his country. Although my father and his brothers were just ordinary men who answered the call of duty during this time, what is extraordinary is the collective service and sacrifice that they gave. As a young girl, I never really had much interest in my father's military pursuits. It wasn't until seeing the movie Saving Private Ryan that my perspective changed. Seeing that movie left me with such profound gratitude that I dug into as much history of his service that I could find. One particular item found among my father's memorabilia left me in awe. This photo of the Susi brothers, all together in uniform, has become a family treasure. These young men gave up so much of their early adulthood to serve their country during a time of war and beyond. Their dedication to their country was a huge sacrifice for their family, yet their parents patriotically allowed all their sons to serve when their help was so desperately needed at home. Given that at least 4 of the brothers were sent overseas to Asia and the South Pacific at the height of the war, it was truly amazing that they all came home safe. In a time before cell phones and internet connections, I cannot begin to understand the anguish my grandparents and aunts must have felt during those years, left to wonder when there might be a dreaded knock at the door or a telegram reporting news that no one wanted to hear. That all 6 brothers came home safely and went on to raise their families in Danvers and the surrounding communities is truly a miracle. The Susi brothers, while individually ordinary, were collectively extraordinary. Indeed, they were a band of brothers and 6 hometown heroes. Thank you.
In memory of Sergeant Francis Norris, who left this property on April 19th to fight the British, if you want to call it. We were the British at that point. The Crown troops in Concord. Francis probably left this property, walked up the driveway, and made it to Arlington. He made it home. In honor of Francis Norris. Cut to cover. To your firing position. Open your hand. Handle your cartridge. Right. Set your hand. Bow. Bow. Show the pilots. Airframe, make ready. Freeze it. Fire. Now cock pilot. Check your hands. Shoulder. From the right. 1. Arms. From the right, shoulder. Good. To the left, face. To the forward. By the right wheel. March. Gentlemen, in honor of Matthew Putnam, a private in the Revolutionary War, marched out of Danvers Village at that point on April 19th. Cut to recover. To your priming positions. Open your hands. Handle your cartridge. Right. Set your hands. Pause. Brakes. Make ready. Present. Fire. Half cock, firelocks. Set your pants. Shoulder. From the right. One. Arms. From the right. Shoulder.
In gratitude for all that we have shared, may the words spoken and heard today linger in our hearts. These are the stories of the honorable amongst us, and we must continue to hold reverently the accomplishments and sacrifices made by our servicemen and women. Today we reflect, remember, and stand in honor of them, remembering the cost and holding in our hearts the cause of freedom. God's peace and grace to all this day. Amen.
Candle, y'all. Count it.